Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Central Wisconsin Book Festival this afternoon for our event with Gillian Goerz today. My name is Elizabeth Lutz. I'm one of the festival organizers. Please say hi in the chat with your name and where you're tuning in from this afternoon. You can turn on your camera if you'd like, but please leave your microphone turned off and use the chat for any questions. I'd like to take a moment to thank our festival sponsors with a short video.
Hello, and welcome to the 2021 Central Wisconsin Book Festival. Before we begin, we would like to thank those organizations and businesses that help make this year's festival possible.
Our presenting sponsors and benefactors this year are
the Community Arts Grant Program and Community Foundation of North Central Wisconsin,
with funds provided by the Wisconsin Arts Board,
the Community Foundation,
the B.A. and Esther Greenheck Foundation,
the Marathon County Public Library Foundation,
Ware, and the Covantage Cares Foundation.
Our 2021 sustainers are Wisconsin Humanities,
with funds from the National Endowment for the Humanities,
the Portage County Public Library Foundation.
Other supporters include the Marathon County Public Library,
the Portage County Public Library,
McMillan Memorial Library,
the Friends of the Marathon County Public Library,
the Marathon County Historical Society,
Whitewater Music Hall,
Wisconsin Public Radio,
and Janke Bookstore.
Thank you so much to all of our sponsors and supporters.
And thanks to you.
Thanks to you.
And thanks to you.
And thank you to you.
Thanks to you.
All of our authors, all of our readers.
And thanks to you for being part of the Central Wisconsin Book Festival.
Thank you to all of our sponsors. Now I'd like to introduce our guest today. Gillian Goerz is a Canadian cartoonist, writer, and illustrator. Her first graphic novel, Shirley and Jamila Saved Their Summer, received starred reviews from Kirkus and Publishers Weekly, was included in the New York Public Library and CBC Books Best Books of 2020, and was praised in the New York Times Review of Books. Her follow-up, Shirley and Jamila's Big Fall, comes out in fall 2021. Gillian loves drawing and talking about comics and creativity with kids and people of all ages. Gillian, welcome to the Central Wisconsin Book Festival today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm delighted. Good to see everybody here. So I'm going to chat for about probably a little under 30 minutes about what I went through making my book, Shirley and Jamila Saved Their Summer, which was published by Dial Books for Young Readers, which is part of like the Young Penguin company. So we're going to dive into that, and then I am going to do some drawing, and then we'll leave some time for some questions from anyone in the audience. So without much further ado here, I'm going to dive into sharing my screen, and I will be talking over it. So away we go. And feel free to throw questions into the chat. I probably won't look at them until after, but then they'll be there and then they can be highlighted. So I'm going to share the old screen. You can get a quick sneak peek at my messy desktop. You're welcome. Here we go. She's loading. Is it looking okay? Yes? Okay, I see a head nod. Beautiful. So my name is pronounced Gillian Goerz as opposed to Gillian Goerz or Gillian Goerz, which are things I have heard. So, but you can just call me Gillian in the chat or call me nothing at all. So this is my book of We've Discussed. It came out in July 2020, and it was my first full-length graphic novel for kids. I've done a bunch of other small work and little short comics, and I've been working as a professional freelance illustrator for probably 10 years, and I've sort of been drawing my whole life, but this was the first big one. My second book, Shirley and Jamila's Big Fall, comes out this November. It's supposed to be fall, but you know, COVID caused some delays. And so we're gonna, as a team, decide that November counts as fall still. And I appreciate your collusion in that illusion. So I've been drawing since I was this old, and since I was this old, and since I was this old. So you don't have to start drawing since you were 2 to get a career or have fun making art and comics. But for me, it's been a bit of a lifelong journey towards this end. So come on, there we go. Comics are the best, and I'm here to talk with you about them. We're going to talk about how I made my comic, how you can make your comics, and we're going to invent a new character together. So let's dive in. So how I got started. Been drawing since I was really little, and it really didn't morph into a career for me until I was in my 30s. And I moved to Toronto, went back to art school, which I don't think is a requisite for an art career, but it is what I did. And here's a picture of me illustrating the window at the Opera House in Toronto. The gigs that come along when you're trying to make a living as an illustrator and artist are all over the map. So if anybody out there is hoping to do it, keep your eyes open and your options open. The beginning of my book came when I doodled this girl. I doodled Shirley Bones, and she very much came to me fully formed, and I knew what her name was, and I knew I wanted to tell more stories about her and that she needed more of a platform. So I had her, but I needed more help. So one of the first things I did was go to a writing conference. And truly as a noob, I was not an experienced writer, although I had done some copywriting and blogging and whatnot, like we all did in the early 2000s. So I just boldly went to a writing conference, and it was through that I was able to speed pitch my idea to some agents. And I met my agent, Anjali, who's been just critical to me getting started and getting a publishing deal, which I did get with Dial Books for Young Readers. So that was all lined up. Now I had to actually make the books, which turned out to be the hard part. So here's how it went down for me. This is a couple of pictures of my studio here in Toronto that I share with a bunch of different people. It's very much a shared space and so much fun to work out of. The energy of a bunch of different people in one room is dynamite. So the first thing that I had to do is start to write the story and do an outline. And because I didn't really know what I was doing, hadn't done it before, I was still working out the workflow. So what I began doing was just drawing and writing at the same time. And sometimes it came out really rough looking. And so I made what's called thumbnails. Here's an example of a page from the very original draft of Shirley and Jamila Save Their Summer. And you can see it's a bit of a mishmash. And you can kind of see in that middle section that like I've actually cut paper out, written on it, and taped it on top. So it was a true collage, hands-on, pen and paper, lined paper. No special tools were required in the making of this at this stage. So sometimes the journey was a little rough. You can see a very rough page to what it ended up looking like finished. Sometimes the page is a little less rough. Here, the words came quickly, but I didn't truly have the pictures yet. So this page eventually became this. Looks quite different. Sometimes through the process of edits and all the things that I went through, here we had something, each of these panels was going to be a full page, but by the time it was done, they were smushed into one page. So that's also part of the job of an editor, to be like, hey, the pacing here is a little slow. What if we move multiple pieces of information onto one page to keep the book flowing a little faster? Sometimes the thumbnails hardly changed. Here's an example of the very first edition of this, and the final is almost identical. So the first thing I had to do, script and thumbnails. Then I sent that into my editor. I scanned it all in. That took forever. And then I got edits back from the publisher. So what they do in this context is, some of it is truly like just spelling and punctuation stuff. I'm a terrible speller. Being a good speller is not requisite for being a writer, because editors exist and so does spell check. So don't cut yourself out of a possible future career just because you're bad at a small specific thing. There's a lot of room for people to help there. They also help do stuff like I just addressed, like address the pacing. How, if this is an urgent scene, let's put a lot of information into a few number of pages, or maybe we want to drag some stuff out. There's a few pages with not a lot of words, but just a lot of pictures. So pacing, something to really think about. And they really helped with that, in addition to helping me with the actual structure of the story. Like this whole chapter can go, or this part should move over here. This is kind of where the edits came in from the publisher. This is also where not everything got caught. My book has secret mistakes in it that everybody missed. The publishers went through it, I went through it. They went through it again, I went through it again. And still there are mistakes that made it to print. So if anyone here can find one of the mistakes, you can email me and I will send you a special prize. I've only had one kid successfully find it. But I'll give you a hint to know what the type of mistake is, because there was a few people who were like, I think this is a mistake, and it was something that was on purpose. What is in there? There's one word, and I'm not going to tell you what the word is, that doesn't have a speech bubble around it, and it's laid right on top of artwork. So you can barely see it because the black line of the type and the black line of the artwork lay on top of each other. So you really got to go digging. The other hint I'll give you is that it's in like the back third of the book. So you don't even have to look in the first half, but once you get to the second half, start to look around. And if you can find it, drop me an email or hit me up on Instagram. You can drop into my DMs and I will send you something. Let me know your address. I'll send you a picture, some stickers, something fun, because you are a true detective. So secret mistakes, they happen. Oh, I just need to click on here. There we go. So this is a picture of my manuscript after all the edits. It was very much a paper, pencil, tape, a bunch of tabs. These were the things. This is how I did the first book. The second book was a little bit more smooth and not quite so analog, but you know, this is something anybody can do at this stage. So here's an example that I'm going to take everybody through of a page from thumbnail to completely finished at a few different stages. So these are my thumbnails, and this is a nice page, but it's a moment where the characters, Shirley and Jamila, who are two unlikely friends who end up becoming not teen, but like 10-year-old girl detectives together. And in the solving of kid-sized crimes, they also learn a lot about friendship because neither of them have really had a close friend before. So Shirley Bones is sort of the Sherlock Holmes character. And as a result, she's very smart and really leans on her intelligence and hasn't been like called to be sensitive or have to compromise in any way. So this is a moment in the book when she's sort of realizing that friendship is an important skill that she needs to learn, maybe as important as detective stuff. So this was my initial page, and my editor very wisely said, hey, this moment where she realizes that she needs to know about having a friend should take more time. This is the pacing thing I mentioned. So let's take this bottom panel and make it a whole page. We're going to slow things down. And that's called a splash page, when there's just one panel that takes up an entire page. This page is also what's called full bleed, which is to say there's no white border around the outside of the page. The art spreads all the way to the edge. So here I've moved this into the page, but I still have to draw in the rest of the page. So this is the next stage of editing, which is our pencils. The initial thumbnails they're very rough sketches, and they've now been approved. And so now I need to go in with a pencil and start to do like the more fine rough draft that eventually will be the final artwork. So here's an example of that happening. You can see the blue lines in there. I'm starting to sketch out the backyard that they're in. It's still pretty rough, but we're getting an idea. So again, I mentioned this is going to be a full bleed page, no border around the outside, art all the way to the edge of the page. So here, now I'm moving into an even tighter stage of the pencils. All this orange line that's in here is me starting to actually make sure everything lays together. I laid down what's called a perspective grid, just to make sure that the stuff that's far away looks far away, the stuff that's close looks close. And, you know, when things are further away, they look smaller. So you can drop in a grid that helps you line everything up so it doesn't look wonky. So this here is the template that the publishers gave me to help me make sure that everything that's going to be printed is in the safe zone. So that pink line right in the center, that's like the super safe zone. That's going to make it to the page no matter what. But the way they often print books is it's on a bigger sheet of paper than you actually see in the book. And a big, huge industrial knife cuts the extra edges off to give you this nice crisp book. So if you want to have a full bleed page like we do, you have to make a little bit of extra art that bleeds off the edge of the page so that it can get cut away. So you need to make sure nothing important is on that portion of the page so that it doesn't accidentally get cut off. And then suddenly your words are gone, or someone's face, or an important piece of the puzzle. So that's what these lines all represent. Next up, once all of these pencils are approved, we move to this phase where I get to do inking, which is the super fun part, but also the scary part, because this is the final artwork that will go to print. So let's have a look at the inks. I am working digitally at this point. Now, at this point, everything is scanned in and I'm working on a large tablet where I can like draw right on the screen. It's not imperative to do it like this. You can do it with actual ink on a page. But for me, it's a lot faster to do it digitally because you don't have to scan and do all that kind of cleanup. So I made the investment to buy this fairly expensive piece of equipment, but don't feel like that should be a barrier for you as like a beginner comics maker or somebody who wants to play with it. So I did this on a background layer in the program Photoshop. And I put my backgrounds on one layer so that if I have to move them around, there's still the option to move the characters around in front of that background without having to erase anything. So here is the inked page all completed. Looks kind of similar to the beginning, but you know, things are coming together now. So after that, it's coloring time once the inks are all approved. Now I got somebody to help me doing something that's called flatting, but we'll get to that. I did all my coloring myself here. So let's move along. Oh, that's a little further than I want it to be. So here's the ink page all completed. And this, the center page that has all these wacky colors is what's called flatting, which is I paid somebody else to do all of the tedious selecting of these shapes and just drop in random colors. Then they would send me the file back and I can use a tool in Photoshop called the paint bucket just to drop in the correct colors. So I can color it by just going click, 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 instead of having to sit with a cursor and trace every shape. So that was worth it for me in the interests of time. Come on, there we go. And so here's with the correct colors in it, mostly. So you can see there's a few gradients. It's sort of flat colors, but there's some areas where, you know, when I want something to look further away, I make it a little bit darker or make the color more dull. And I make it lighter and brighter or more vibrant when it's closer to the viewer to give you the sense of depth. So this is how we create this sort of illusion of a 3D space on a two-dimensional image. So this is the same image, but I've just moved it here so we can compare. Oops, there we go. So here's with some more shading and extra stuff put in. You'll also see here, I changed the color of this tree. It's worth mentioning in terms of, this is the color theory. These are the things we think about. This tree was nice and dark, so it felt back, but that bright red really drew your eye to it. And something that I wanted to be conscious of is that you want to make sure the viewer's eye goes to the most important thing in the page, the thing that's telling the story. This tree isn't giving us any information about what's going on with these characters. I want to go to the important stuff, which is the look between these two characters. We want to see the characters' faces. So I wanted to make sure the most vibrant colors and brightest colors on the page were where the action's happening. So we've got her bright yellow hair and we've got Jamila's bright red jersey. This was fighting with it, so I got rid of it. You got to be ready to cut some of these things so that all the artwork helps you in telling the story as best it can. So after that, we added some more highlights. I wanted it to have that fun, like afternoon summer vibe. So we've got dappled light coming in through the trees. Now, I didn't have the time to do this much color detail on every page, but by doing it on this page, it also tells the viewer, this is an important moment. The artwork in this page is a level up from everything else. So I'm going to really take the time with this moment. So just to compare, here's that exact same page with the line work turned off, which is just kind of fun to see. And here's the actual final art. So that is the process. So here's how it began. Remember this rough pencil? We actually only ended up using just this portion. We blew it out here, and then this is where it finished off. What are we doing for time here? Okay, perfect. So that's the complete comic, sort of. There's a little bit more that happens after all of this is done. And, you know, to nip a potential question in the bud, this comic was probably 2 years in the making, start to finish, from like the beginning of the script, of me actually working on it properly, to when the artwork was handed in. The most recent book that I did in 18 months, but this one was my first one, so it took longer. We're still figuring out processes. And yeah, it was about 2 solid years of work, not even including all of the like years of prior work, developing the script, getting the agent, doing all that stuff. Start to finish was probably the work of 5 years. But in terms of actually hard labor towards the finished product, 2. So a really fun part that happens before you're officially done is getting printers' proofs. Once everything's been sent in, they send it to the printer overseas, and they print it out on the exact paper that the actual book will be printed on. They print you out the cover on the paper that'll be on. All the shiny gloss stuff that happens on the cover here, you can sort of see this one's a little shiny. And they send you the whole book, but it's not been bound. It's just loose sheets of paper held together with a clip, and you can flip through it. And this is also your last chance to look for mistakes typically, where I still didn't catch that mistake that maybe you out there will catch. We'll see. But yeah, this was a really fun thing. It's the last step before you hold the book in your hands and things start to really feel real. And it's very exciting. So here's another process photo. This was my studio at the beginning. It was obviously a totally different studio because the whole thing, again, took 5 years more or less from start to finish. And this is sort of an accurate representation of what the artist's life can be, which is to say this window did not close correctly. So we have a garbage bag stuck on it. And I didn't have proper curtains, so the sun would get so bright, I would use this umbrella to hide behind my computer so that it wasn't so bright to look at the screen. It was an amazing studio in Toronto's Chinatown, but eventually the building got sold and we were forced to move. So I ended up in a much more beautiful space over here. And that is where I finished the book. So this is how it looked when it was done. This whole page in the back, or this wall in the background, became kind of like, you know, a wild detective's map of all the different things that I'd stuck on the wall. These cardboards down here that have pictures stuck on them, I put my reference images there so that I didn't have to go digging through stuff. I personally really like to have a physical copy of anything I want to refer to, so I'm not having to dig on my computer through files. I just want it in front of my eyes. So that's how I work. Let's see here. So I will go through this thing, but I'm actually gonna stop then, and then we'll do some drawing. But it is important, and I want you to know this thing. It's critical. Are you ready for this important information? Here it comes. You don't have to be good at drawing to make comics. And this is something I really want everybody out there to know, whether you're an adult, whether you're a kid, whether you're an educator, whether you're just a book lover. There is a lot of information that comes to children via adults about the idea of a good drawing and a bad drawing. And that judgment is actually arbitrary, because a lot of the art you see out there, if you go and dig around in a kid's book library or in a comic area, you can make an excellent comic with stick figures for real. It's just about what you're communicating and what you're expressing. So I just want to encourage everybody out there to not judge their drawings as good or bad. You could judge them as successful or not successful in conveying the feeling or the emotion or the shape that you're trying to. If you draw a circle and you say it's a banana, I would say that's not a successful drawing, but is it good or bad? No, it's tons of fun. And Linda Berry is an author that I would strongly recommend, particularly any adults, go look into if they're a vehicle to creativity for children, because her teachings around making comics, truly some of the finest stuff out there. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I think that was successful. And now I'm going to do some drawing with you. Now, I see there is a little bit of action in the chat here. Oh, okay, great. Someone already has a scanner. That's amazing. You can definitely scan. Fantastic. What I'm going to pose to you in the chat. Now, usually what I'll do is take suggestions from the audience and make a character. But another thing that we could do is I can just show you how to draw the characters in the book. So I would love to see in the chat would you like to see me draw characters? Like, I need to phrase that better. Do you want to see me draw Shirley and Jamila, or would you like to give me suggestions that I will then draw and we'll make a collaborative character together? The choice is yours. I need at least one comment in there ASAP. Oh, collaborative. Okay, we've got a shout for collaborative. And if I don't hear from anybody else, that's what we're doing. Okay, so I have paper here on my wall. I have various drawing implements in my hand. And I would love to hear from you guys in the chat, which I will be simultaneously watching, what kind of character we want to draw. So what I usually do is, let's start with shapes. That's always a great place to start. Would you like to see a head shape here? We're going to draw at least, doesn't have to be a human, but it's going to be like a anthropomorphic form. So we want a head shape. Is it a circle? Is it an oval? Is it a triangle? I need activity in the chat for this to work, guys. So let's do it. What am I doing for head shape? Ooh, I'm gonna make a mark. I need some head shape. I see oval, fantastic. And you can go ahead and start to jump right in on what kind of nose we want. We could have a big nose, we could have big nostrils, it could be a pig's nose, a cat's nose, it could be a bird's beak. There will be the rest of the oval up top. I'm just gonna sketch that in light. So we've got an oval. What else do we have here? I mean, this is kind of starting to look like Shirley Bones, to be quite honest. I see horse nose. Oy vey. Okay, this is we're gonna bring a horse nose out right here. Go ahead and give me some feedback on the eyes while I'm drawing this horse nose. I mean, a horse nose is kind of like a part of a horse head, so we're losing some of the oval, but that's fine. And we've got sleepy eyes here. Let's start thinking about hair, hats, anything you want to throw into the chat, just jump in. This horse is sleepy. We got a sleepy old horse here. Anything else? So I'm not going to worry about having drawn this line over top. Ooh, spiky hair. I like that. Okay, let's go spiky hair. And we don't have to be married to this being a horse even. It could have the ears of some other animal. It could have elephant ears. It could have cat's ears. Don't limit yourself by what we're seeing so far. We got some spiked hair. The spikes are a little droopy at the beginning because he's so sleepy. What else do we have? Oh, big hat, I see. Any more detail on big hat, or just, I'm gonna just take it away if I don't hear. There we go. We'll give this person, their spiky hair has roots. They haven't been dyeing it regularly. And we'll give them a big hat. Let's see here, is that in the screen? Yes, it is. Never mind the hat, we have hair. Too late, the hat's coming in. There we go, there's the hat. A big floppy hat. There we go. And if anybody's curious, I am using a Pentel brush pen right now, which is really fun. These are a delightful tool. I also have, this is a fun brush pen that you can fill up the reservoir yourself with ink and then dilute it with water. So it sort of makes like a gray that you can control yourself. So we can give this horse some coloring here. There we go. Emphasize those sleepy eyes. He's baggy. He's been up all night. What else we got? We need some body parts. We need clothing items. We need a shirt, some shoes. Wait, oh, small ears. Okay, what type of ears? Are we talking about horse ears? Are we talking about human ears? Well, I'm gonna put a human ear on it because I think that seems funny. Let's give him like a fairly small little human ear right here. A human ear is actually quite a fun thing to draw. The classic comic style of drawing an ear like this totally works. But if you want to make a more detailed ear, it's just like put a little lobe on it. It's sort of like drawing a lumpy pea. And then if you just like honestly throw a few squiggles in, you've drawn a human ear that looks pretty good. What else do we want? I'm going to give him some buzzed head here. So he's got spikes on the top and he's got a buzzed head. Oh, you know what this thing could be? Let's make this like, used to be the oval chin. We're going to make this into like an earring that connects. So this is his earring chain. And it's going to connect to like a bridle situation since it's a horse. There we go. So we don't have to worry about any sort of lines that seem like they're getting in the way. We're just going to make them work for us. So I'm going to give him, I need to see some more suggestions here, folks. But until I hear more suggestions, I'm just going to make stuff up. So I'm going to give him like a braid down the back. He's got a spike out the front and we're going to have a braid down the back. Let's see here, rock concert t-shirt, fantastic suggestion. This is already quite an unusual character. Let's see here, we've got the neck. I think of a rock concert t-shirt as being kind of ripped up. So I'm gonna make kind of a jagged line here and we'll like have some stitches and maybe like a safety pin coming through. Because he's a rocker. Rockers don't take good care of their clothes. They're ripping them up. Bell-bottom pants, love it. See, I'm getting into a problem here of like, I probably should have started smaller. We're gonna be running out of space, but we can always make that work. I'll just have them kind of crouched up so you can see the pants. Here's the big old bell bottoms. What else does it say? We have a suggestion for a Hawaiian lei. Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll pop that in there. Here's the bell bottom pants. He's gonna be kneeling. Is that in the frame still? Yes, it is. Okay, there's the pants. Let's give him his Hawaiian lei, which if anybody watching doesn't know, is like a garland of flowers that you wear around your neck. Boom, 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 boom. See, I like these Pentel brush pens because even though it sort of looks like this one's drying out a little bit, it adds all this nice texture. Okay, we got the bell-bottom pants. What else do we have? Muscular torso sweater. Okay, I love it. We'll give him his muscular torso on his rock concert t-shirt. He's maybe going to be lifting it up to show off his awesome abs because he's a bit of a show-off horseman. There we go. There's his abs in here. Check them out. Horse abs coming in strong. Let's give him a big belt. There we go. I mean, we need this shirt still needs to be more rock and roll. I feel like rock and roll, I'm going to put a lightning bolt on it. That sort of says rock. It's crazy. It's tough. There we go. Maybe some sort of like guitar in the background. This is a little out of my wheelhouse. It's just drawing a guitar freestyle, but I'm going to take a stab at it. Okay, that's that's the guitar. Pew, pew, pew. There. It's not my best, but you know what? I tried, and that's what counts. But this is what we're talking about, successful versus non-successful. Does this read as an electric guitar? Maybe not. Maybe not my most successful drawing. Peace sign, belt buckle. Oh, great call. Okay, let's sneak that in here. There we go. We're sort of running out of room. So I'll put some more peace signs on his pants just to like drive the point home. Because he's a cool hippie horseman. And what about shoes? I mean, I feel like we're right in the zone to have some like awesome platform shoes with like fish in them. How about a nice platform fish shoe? There's the platform. We're going to put stars on it because why not? And then this part's going to be striped. And this part's going to be like a clear lucite scenario that has a goldfish in it. Although a goldfish would not live long in such shoes, so like, let's not, but just for pretend we can do it. There we go. His other shoe is mostly covered because that's the essence of the bell bottom. It's probably out of the frame a little bit too. Yeah, it is. Anything else? I mean, look, this guy's looking pretty good, but we do have another arm to do something with. So he could be holding something. He could be whatever. He could be have a cup of coffee. He could be eating a sandwich, a burger made of trees, whatever you want. Also, this guy's almost done. So I would love to encourage the audience to start thinking of questions they might have for a little Q&A option. Holding some kind of sign. Great choice. What should the sign be of or say? I mean, this guy's kind of a hippie, like a make love not war sign seems in the vein of what we might be seeing from such a fellow. Peace, give peace a chance kind of energy. There we go. So we've got a hand here. Here's the sign. What's it gonna say? I'm gonna wait for that one. Make coffee not war. Absolutely, let's do it. Oh, I see. we go. There we go. Not war. And voila, we have our wonderful, beautiful hippie horseman. He loves his cup of coffee. He's got sickening abs. He's a rock and roller. He's been to Hawaii at least once. And it's as easy as that to create a character from scratch. Games, if you're interested in doing something like this for fun on your own with pals, games like Telestrations or Exquisite Corpse are great for this and really make drawing a fun exercise instead of like a stressful scourge, which a lot of people have. There's a lot of often anxiety and stress around drawing because of the pressure of like, this is a good drawing, this is a bad drawing. When we're young kids, we all draw. Everybody drew until a certain age when they started to onboard those messages about like, well, I can't draw because so-and-so is better than me. And I'm here to tell y'all, you don't have to do that. We can just keep drawing for fun and make silly shapes. Playing games like Telestrations with pals, honestly, the pals who don't identify as good drawers make the funniest drawings. And somebody who has a lot of experience doing drawing and draftspersonship, often my drawings are a little tighter and belabored and not as fun and funny. So, you know, bring the fun to it. Now, with this beautiful man in the background, I'm happy to take some questions from the audience if anybody has any for me, if there's anything I didn't cover in my chat, or if you want me to add anything else to this beautiful fellow here, we can also give him a name. So lots of time for questions and or suggestions on what else you might need. Peace sign on his hat. Done. Let's do it right here. There's lots of.
I do have a question, Gillian. You mentioned your process with making the graphic novels, the pictures and the panels, the thumbnail panels. What about the actual writing process? What goes in the speech bubbles? How do you prepare yourself to write from Shirley's perspective and from Jamila's perspective?
That's a good question. It's getting into the head of like kind of into a kid voice is one part of it. For me, doing a lot of reading in that grade level was really helpful. I reread a lot of my favorite middle grade kids books, like as I was in the process of writing it, just to kind of level my mental conversation to that kid bracket so that I just wasn't accidentally being too adult. So that was part of it. And I also think that I'm sort of a bit of a perpetual child in my brain and heart. So it wasn't as hard as it might have been because I live a bit of a silly life and like to keep things kind of silly. So it wasn't that difficult. I also found that like reading, because the book is loosely based on Sherlock Holmes, I had source material to refer to. And thinking about the way that Shirley talked, it's always going to be a little bit more British and a little bit more big words and high-minded. Whereas Jamila is like much more invested in playing sports and having fun. And she's got other brothers that she's roughhousing around with. So her mental space is in a different place. I also do have a bit of a background in acting. So it is sort of an acting exercise. I would imagine that conversation taking place in my mind and just kind of transcribe whatever came to it. So I hope that answers it. I see there's a couple other questions here. How did you make a living while you were working on the book since it took so long? Very good and salient question. In addition to doing the graphic novel stuff, I also have been a freelance illustrator. So did pick up the odd freelance illustration gig. And I also do a job that's called graphic recording or like scribing, live drawing, where like a corporation, it's often corporations or organizations that will hire me to do kind of this, except there might be a keynote speaker. And then I would draw on a piece of paper or on a whiteboard and write down key ideas and draw symbols and stuff. It's sort of like a corporate art job, essentially, that typically requires sort of improv skills. I go in and listen and just draw live what's happening. So that I supplemented my income with that. But it's a good question because the advance wouldn't have been enough to live on, especially in an expensive city like Toronto. And I also see you make drawing hands look easy. Thank you so much. I noticed the folded fingers technique work well. Please say more about this. I mean, Please say more about it. I feel like what you're seeing here is the result of a lifetime of practice. So I'm not necessarily thinking about, I'm thinking about the hand as it would be. But I've also spent a lot of time like holding my own hand up and drawing to sort of get a sense of what that looks like. But thinking of the hand as a shape instead of as like a hand, this intimidating thing with the prongs, is helpful. Like a hand, essentially, you've got this shape here. So it's like, if I'm going to do a hand, it's sort of like this, roughly. And then your thumb comes out here, and then the fingers come out here and bend along these breaks. So if you start to kind of think of it that way, you can sort of like make a model of the hand in your brain, and then you move it. And also we have obviously this thumb break. So suddenly it's going to move. We've got a joint where it moves here, and we've got a joint where it moves here. So this can come in and this can go like that. And then these guys can all bend on those different breaks. So it just starts to mean that if you sort of start to understand how the hand works and moves, it becomes less intimidating just to start to move it around. Another technique is also, like, there's legitimate full comics where people are just drawing hands like this. Like, it doesn't have to be that fancy. But in terms of actually wanting to like do technical drawings, nothing beats using a reference and taking a lot of runs at it. Who are some of the artists and writers that inspired you, and who are some of the people working now that you admire? Great question. Artists and writers. I mean, honestly, I have always really valued kids' literature. That's why I wanted to make a middle grade graphic novel and like write for kids and teens. I think that their heads are really in an interesting place. And some of the best writing I've ever read is for that bracket. So Beverly Cleary, Lois Lowry, the Anastasia Krupnik series, Harriet the Spy, Great Gilly Hopkins. These are books that I grew up with. And there's more contemporary equivalents now that don't leap to mind because that's just where my references are. But those writers are very inspirational, specifically because I feel like they really elevate a child's emotional experience and legitimize it. It's not, they really put you in the place of the child's emotional experience and really acknowledge the personhood of kids. It's like the Ramona Quimby series. Her problems are as real to her as our adult problems are to us. They just exist in kid world. So, she's not having to worry about mortgage payments or, student loan debts. She's worried about her seat neighbor who's getting credit for her work. And she's worried about the bully on the bus who sort of maybe likes her, but she's not sure. And it's all the same, but they gave it that lovely importance. So that's those writers. I mean, Beverly Cleary, Judy Blume, I couldn't underestimate how influential they were for me. People working now that I really admire, I've been lucky enough to work with one of my kind of top admirees, which would be Mariko Tamaki and Jillian Tamaki. They did the books Skim and this one Summer, and have both done individual other work that's fabulous individually and together. Another Jillian is an incredible artist, just maybe one of the best working today. When I was working on my graphic novel, I couldn't look at her work because it paralyzed me with imposter syndrome, because I'm like, well, nothing I can make would ever look this good. So, there is a nice thing to keeping the people you admire in your circle. And there's a thing to like having to shut out other influences so that you're not intimidated out of continuing. At least that's how it was for me. There's a kid's graphic novel called Snapdragon by Kat Ley. I'm not sure you pronounce her last name. It's Leyh. That's one of my favorite books that's come out in the last couple of years. That Dragon Hoops I thought was really good by, now I'm going to forget his name. It's Gene, and I don't remember his middle and last name, but Dragon Hoops is great. There's so many good people working in comics right now, and that's kind of where my head's at. So it's like the newest graphic novel series, like go to your local library and see what the kids and middle grade graphic novels are. And that's sort of what I've been reading. It's just chewing my way through everything at my local library.
What do you hope people take from your stories?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I hope that people find them fun. I wanted to make a book that was funny and fun, but also had some heart and hopefully did what my favorite kids' books growing up did, which is give legitimacy to the emotional experiences of kids. I really wanted it to be for kids from their perspective. Harriet the Spy is one of my favorite books because I made a comic actually about Louise Fitzhugh, the author of it. And researching that was so wonderful because I learned that she was a bit of a pioneer in making kids' books that were actually about kids' experiences, as opposed to kids lit before, which was often prescriptive books that were like, here's how to be a proper lady or a good working man or whatever. They were often like, sit up straight etiquette guides for children, and didn't see kids. The kids didn't get angry in them. The kids didn't behave poorly. The kids, or if they did, they were immediately punished so that you could learn not to do that. So her book was really powerful for me because it really is about Harriet living in her own world, and her nurse really is the person who sees her as a person. Her parents sort of see her as, I don't know, I don't need to get into the whole thing of it, but that's sort of what I wanted. I'd love for people to take from my book, and by people, I mean kids primarily, but I also did write this book for anybody, to think of it as just a kids thing. It's like, I wanted it to be a story that anybody can relate to, where it can be hard to make friends. It can be hard to connect to people. It's about communication and understanding and listening to one another, and that being a solid foundation for friendship.
Can you share the best way for readers to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. I'm probably easiest got by Instagram, which my Instagram handle is @jilliang.com, and with dot and com written out, like DOTCOM. And from there, all my contact information is available. So people are more than welcome to shoot me a line. I also have some free resources that actually I can send to you if you'd like, so that they can be available through the Wisconsin Book Fest platform, that are drawing and writing activities for kids that just anybody's more than welcome to print out or use digitally. And if you do that, or kids in your life do that, I would love to be tagged and see the work, because it's so fun to see kids drawing. And what they are basically is, it's like a bottom half of Shirley and Jamila's face, and then you can make a disguise for them. It's like about, disguise. Detective work is disguise. So it's just a chance for kids to do this, of making characters and having some fun with drawing. And there's a blank comic page that you can fill in the writing of. So it's like a page from Shirley and Jamila Save Their Summer. You make the story for it. So hopefully, if you work on any of that, I would love to see it. And if you find the secret mistake in the book, let me know and I'll send you something fun.
Definitely. I also want to remind everyone that Gillian's books are available from local Central Wisconsin bookstores, Janke Bookstore in Wausau, and Bound to Happen Books in Stevens Point, or you can go online to bookshop.org and support independent booksellers.
Oh yes, we love that.
And I'm going to put in the chat a link to our survey. If you wouldn't mind filling out our survey, that'll help us plan more great events for next year. This has been so fun, Gillian. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Here, I'm also dropping into the chat the resources that I just mentioned, so you can also pull them from there.
Yes.
If they don't load in time before we're done, then you can come at me and I'll send them directly.
Okay. Yeah. Send those to Gillian or hand them in at the library, and we'll get those to her. Thank you for this afternoon, and thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a delight.